This book is Clifford's Family. I am Amelia Elizabeth, and this is my dog. His name is Clifford. We live in a small town now, but we were both born in the city. One day we went back to visit our old home in the city. Clifford hadn't seen his mother since he was a tiny puppy. She hardly knew him. She still treated him like a puppy. She checked his teeth and she looked at his ears to see if he had been washing them. The man told us where Clifford's brothers and sisters lived. We went to find them. Clifford's sister Claudia lived nearby. She was taking her owner for a walk. We went to the park with them. A taxi was blocking the crosswalk. Clifford took care of that. Next we found his brother, Nero. Nero was a rescue dog at the fire station. While we were there, the alarm rang. We followed the fire truck. Nero rushed into the building. Clifford helped him. Nero was very brave. Then we set off to the country. Clifford's other sister, Bonnie, was a farm dog. One of Bonnie's jobs was to herd sheep into their pen. Clifford wanted to do some farm work too. He started to drive the cows toward the barn. One of the cows was a bull, and bulls don't like the color red. So Clifford wasn't scared, he was smart. He didn't want to hurt the bull, so he jumped out of the way. When Clifford jumps, he really jumps. We had one more place to visit. It was Clifford's father's home in a town nearby. The house was small, and there were a lot of kids playing in the yard. Clifford's father didn't have a collar or a dog dish or a dog house, but he seemed very happy. I guess it was the kids. He sure loved kids. He was a lot like Clifford, just a little smaller. Clifford wished his family could come and live with us, but they all had people who needed them. Just as I needed Clifford, the best dog of all. The end. What is your favorite part of the story? My favorite part of the story is where Emily Elizabeth said that Clifford was the best dog of all. Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood. My family is special. Hi, neighbor. Today is Family Day. I will make a tree branch with a picture of my family on it. Jody's making her branch. There is a leaf for her, one for her mama, two for her brothers, and one for her Nana. All families are different. Prince Wednesday is making his branch. There's a leaf for him, one for his dad, one for his mom, and one for his brother. All families are different. Find what makes your family special. I get 4 leaves. I get an orange crayon. We are all orange tigers in my family. I draw my dad, my mom, myself, and baby Margaret. Oh, it's making his branch. He grabs a blue crayon. Oh, and his Uncle X have blue feathers. Miss Alina is making her branch. She needs more than one color to draw her family. All families are different. Find what makes your family special. Uncle X and Miss Alina put their branches on the tree. They talk about what makes their family special, but what makes my family special? I know, my family loves to help. All families are different. Find what makes your family special. What are some special things about your family? Aga maga. The end. What is your favorite part of the story? My favorite part of the story is where Daniel finds out what makes his family special. This book is Amelia Bedelia's family album. Amelia Bedelia, says Mrs. Rogers, you have been here a long time. Oh, Mrs. Rogers, said Amelia Bedelia, are you tired of me? Of course not, said Mrs. Rogers. We want to have a party for you. We want to meet your family. Wow, now that is nice, said Amelia Bedelia. Who would you like to invite? Asked Mrs. Rogers. I'll get my family album, said Amelia Bedelia. You can help me decide. Good idea, said Mr. Rogers. Amelia Bedelia got her album. This is my daddy, said Amelia Bedelia. He's a telephone operator. Then he helps people make calls, said Mr. Rogers. He does not, said Amelia Bedelia. He operates on telephones. I see, said Mr. Rogers. This is my mama, said Amelia Bedelia. She's a loafer. You mean she does nothing? Said Mrs. Rogers. Certainly not, said Amelia Bedelia. She works hard. She makes dough into loaves of bread. That's what a loafer does. I see, said Mrs. Rogers. This is Uncle Albert, said Amelia Bedelia. He's a big game hunter. You mean he kills animals? Asked Mrs. Rogers. Why would he do that? Said Amelia Bedelia. He hunts big games. He has one so big, it takes up a whole room. I see, said Mrs. Rogers. Next is Aunt Mary, said Amelia Bedelia. She is a bank teller. Then she cashes people's checks, said Mr. Rogers. No, said Amelia Bedelia. She tells everybody in the bank where to go. Some folks don't like that. I see, said Mr. Rogers. This is Cousin Calvin, said Amelia Bedelia. He's a boxer. Does he win any matches? Said Mrs. Rogers. Amelia Bedelia looked puzzled. Matches? She said. Why would he win any Why would he win matches? A boxer packs boxes. He gets paid money. I see, said Mrs. Rogers. Cousin Edward is a horse racer, said Amelia Bedelia. Oh, he's a jockey, said Mr. Rogers. I don't think so, said Amelia Bedelia. Cousin Edward races horses. He almost won once, but he tripped and fell. I see, said Mr. Rogers. Uncle Ned is a cook, said Amelia Bedelia. He works in a hotel. Then he's a chef, said Mrs. Rogers. No, said Amelia Bedelia. He's a doorman. His name is Ned Cook. I see, said Mrs. Rogers. Uncle Dan takes pictures, said Amelia Bedelia. What kind of pictures does he take? Asked Mr. Rogers. Any kind, said Amelia Bedelia. You really have to watch him. He will take every picture. The house. I see, said Mr. Rogers. Cousin Bea has a fun job, said Amelia Bedelia. She balances checkbooks. I wish she would balance mine, said Mrs. Rogers. She will, said Amelia Bedelia. She can balance 20 at one time. I see, said Mrs. Rogers. My brother Ike wants an orange grove, said Amelia Bedelia, but he had bad luck. How is that? asked Mr. Rogers. He orders orange trees, said Amelia Bedelia, but they all come out green. I see, said Mr. Rogers. This is poor Cousin Chester, said Amelia Bedelia. He's a printer. What does he print? asked Mrs. Rogers. Everything, said Amelia Bedelia. We could never teach him proper writing. I see, said Mrs. Rogers. Cousin Carla is a bookkeeper, said Amelia Bedelia. She must be good at numbers, said Mr. Rogers. No, said Amelia Bedelia, but she's good at keeping books. She never returns one. I see, said Mr. Rogers. Cousin Ella works at clay, said Amelia Bedelia. Is she a potter? asked Mrs. Rogers. I don't know any potters, said Amelia Bedelia. Ella and her husband Clay have a bakery, said Amelia Bedelia. I see, said Mrs. Rogers. Uncle Elf is a garbage collector, said Amelia Bedelia. That's smelly work, said Mr. Rogers. It sure is, said Amelia Bedelia. All of his neighbors moved away. I see, said Mr. Rogers. Cousin Suzanne belongs to a fan club, said Amelia Bedelia. Are there many fans in her club? asked Mr. Rogers. Oh, yes, said Amelia Bedelia. You never saw so many different kinds of fans. I see, said Mr. Rogers. My niece Lulu stuffs olives, said Amelia Bedelia. Does she stuff pimento in the middle, asked Mrs. Rogers. No, said Amelia Bedelia. She stuffs olives into herself. I see, said Mrs. Rogers. The last picture is of Ollie, said Amelia Bedelia. He's my nephew. Ollie is our catcher. What does he catch? asked Mr. Rogers. Everything, said Amelia Bedelia. Measles, mumps, colds, whatever comes along, Ollie catches it. What an unusual family, said Mrs. Rogers. Yes, said Mr. Rogers. "Invite all of them to the party." "All right," said Amelia Bedelia. She left the room. In a bit she came back. They will be here tomorrow," she said. "Tomorrow?" said Mrs. Rogers. "We can't get everything ready by then." "What's to get ready?" asked Amelia Bedelia. "Food," said Mr. Rogers. "Now, Mr. Rogers," said Amelia Bedelia, "my folks know about parties. They will bring the food," said Amelia Bedelia. "But Amelia Bedelia," says Rogers, "will there be enough food for everybody?" "Everybody," said Amelia Bedelia. "I hadn't thought of inviting everybody. What a good idea." She ran outside. "Hear, hear," she shouted. "A party tomorrow? Everybody come!" And everybody came. The end. What's your favorite part of the story? My favorite part of the story is when Mr. Rogers and Mrs. Rogers found out that her niece Lulu does not stuff things into Olives. She stuffs Olives into herself.